What will the Dallas Cowboys draft board look like? We'll show you next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And we've got a really cool show lined up for you guys today. So what we're going to do is we're going to build the Dallas Cowboys 2025 draft board based on what we think they're going to like, or the players they're like, and how they would stack it. So if you're watching with us on YouTube, you'll actually be able to see us building their draft board. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, we'll do our best to kind of explain where all these players are going. But Landon, here's the deal. I'm putting you in charge. You are Will McClay. You're going to be stacking this board, and I'm just going to be helping you.
I'm excited. This is something we've been kicking around as an idea for a while, and it's finally here. So I'm excited to kind of get going on this.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to just stack this based on how we think the Cowboys would draft. So Landon, first player on the board, who's your number one overall prospect?
I think we have to start with Travis Hunter. I think there's obviously the other name that would probably be thought about here would be Carter. But I think that, just there's a lot of reasons why I think Hunter is probably rated above Carter. We've talked about many of them. Obviously, the two-way aspect of that, I think, is a huge aspect. I think that there's a personal, tie here, obviously with Dion and everything. But I mean, none of that really matters. Nope. Travis Hunter is an elite player on two sides of the ball, and probably the best player in this draft, no matter who the team is. So happy to put him up there.
Travis Hunter one, I agree with you. That's if the Cowboys were ever going to go up for a player, it's Travis Hunter, and that obviously means Abdul Carter is at number two. The next question I have for you, Landon, is who is number three? Is it Ashton Jeanty? Is it someone maybe like Mason Graham? Is it on the consensus board? It's Mason Graham. Who is it for you?
I would not be shocked if the Cowboys had Jeanty as the third highest rated player. I think the names that I'm kind of kicking around here are, Warren, Jeanty, and maybe depending on how they feel about T-Mac. Right, like there's some teams that it feels like have T-Mac rated very high. It's hard to really get a gauge on where T-Mac is. Right.
What's interesting for Jeanty is I don't disagree with you. Like if you want to tell me Jeanty is the third best player in this draft, I agree. But I even have doubts that the Cowboys would take him at 12 because of the positional value. So how do you do this in a big board if Jeanty's your third best player, but you wouldn't take him at 12? What's the philosophy there?
Well, the philosophy should be not to window dress your big board, right? Is to stack them as how you should take them. So
let's not put Jeanty at 3 then.
Yeah, if you're not willing to take him that high, then yeah, I would say, look, I tend to think that the Cowboys are probably, more heavy towards highly ranking some of these offensive linemen. So I do think that Armand Membu or Campbell could be considered here.
Which one do you think they like better between? Because I agree with you. I think it's the offensive lineman. Which one do you think they prefer?
I think it's probably Membu, right? Because of the athletic testing and everything.
Yeah, let's do Membu.
And then
so we've got Hunter at 1, Carter at 2, Membu at 3.
I think that here is probably where I would consider, Ted McMillan or Tyler Warren. Or Graham, I think, I think Adams is also in this conversation as well, depending on how. I'm sorry, not Adams. Campbell is in this conversation as well, depending on how they view him. And I think that's the other interesting thing here, right? How do the Cowboys view Campbell? Do they view him as a tackle? They clearly have pretty strong, standards and thresholds that they want folks to meet at positions. And Campbell has just measured 33-inch arms, so. I do wonder if he isn't maybe a little bit lower on this board. So I think we probably put Mimbu here. I would probably put Warren there at
Okay,
4 or
let's let's do Mason Graham, because I do
yeah,
think if Mason Graham is there, he's just such a clean prospect for the most part, and you figure out a way to make it work with Osa and Mozzie Smith.
I have Warren rated higher, but I would not be shocked at all if they had Graham rated.
Okay, let's do Warren at 5. Okay. And then do you want to do
I think Campbell comes in here now.
Yep,
right?
let's do Campbell as well. So our top 6 looks like this: Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Amon Membu, Mason Graham, Tyler Warren, Will Campbell. Now I wouldn't be surprised if the offensive tackles were a little closer to each other, but I bet you those are their top 6 players, not including Cam Ward, the quarterback.
Yeah. Okay. So, and again, we're still continuing to include positional value here, right? So, I mean, that's why we're seeing Genty not on the board here quite yet. I think for me, if we've got Campbell, we've got Warren. So I think now is where we start looking at Ted McMillan, right? Like, I think I probably would put him in here.
Okay.
I'm trying to look at my board, see if there's anyone else that I got higher than him. No, I don't. So I think Ted McMillan is probably at 7. And then now we start to talk about some of the other folks that we haven't really, drafted to the Cowboys in a while, or talked about, in some of these mock drafts, right? Like we've talked about Loveland, and I think he's probably one of the next names on here if he's not the next.
But I wonder. I bet you they still would have Genty ahead of Loveland.
You think so?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so if that's the case, I mean, look, I tend to think even with positional value that Genty is probably a top 10 pick, or probably 10, right?
Okay.
So I say that we should. I think at this point, if you think that Loveland's probably ranked beneath him, then I think you probably have to start looking at some, more elite defensive players like Jalen Walker potentially, or Stewart, or depending on how you view Johnson, the corner from Michigan.
Well, let me give you another name. We've heard they really like Matthew Golden, and they might even take Golden ahead of McMillan. I've got to believe. Let me ask you this: do you think they have Golden ahead of Genty on their board? Or actually, that's a wrong way to phrase it. Do you think they would take Genty over?
If both were on the board?
Yes.
I don't, but I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's hard to gauge exactly how much they like Golden, because it feels like a lot of the Golden hype is coming from Texas folks. So
I bet you they have Golden. I'm sorry. I bet you they have Genty higher.
I bet they do too, honestly. Okay. So I would say, like, you probably now here's the real question, right? Is like, if Stewart and Genty were there, like, that's the real,
I bet they
man.
Get Genty.
Yeah, but it's like the real, like, test of positional value, right? So I think what we're coming to terms with here is that we probably need to put Genty here next.
Okay, let's put Genty. That's fine with me. I think there is a point where they would consider Genty, but I don't think it's like a slam dunk depending on who else is on the board. So we have Ashton Genty at 8, T-Mac at 7, Will Campbell at 6, just kind of recapping where we're at. At pick number 9, I would assume at this point it would either be Jalen Walker, Will Johnson, or Matthew Golden.
Yeah, I would say I would say Johnson for me. I think I have him probably above those other guys.
It's hard to know what they think of Will Johnson, because I do think he's the best corner in this class, but I wonder, like, if they would ever draft a short arm cornerback over Will McClay's dead body at number 12. You know what I mean? So there's a chance that Johnson is like their 9th or 10th best player, that they just don't consider him at 12.
Yeah, I mean, they are pretty serious about their arm length thresholds, and at cornerback, his tape is just so good, though, especially the 2023 tape. So it's hard to kind of rule him out for that. You want to get one more in before we?
You want to put Cam Ward here? I bet they have a high grade on Cam Ward, but they know he's never going to get there.
And
it's one of those. Fair. And if it's one of those things like, hey, we know we're not going to get him, we can rank him high. It's not a big deal. So just to finish out the top 10, Travis Hunter at 1, Abdul Carter at 2. We've got Armand Membu at 3, Mason Graham at 4, Tyler Warren at 5, Will Campbell at 6, Tetero McMillan at 7, Ashton Genty at 8, Will Johnson at 9, Cam Ward at 10. I think there's a couple guys that could be flipped, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got 9 of their top 10 players in this class. I think that's probably pretty close.
Yeah, honestly, it's pretty chalk too, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that at this point in the draft, the Cowboys' personal preferences have really had a huge impact on the kind of swinging of the top 10. It might, I think, as we get a little bit further, we're going to start see that rearing its head a little bit.
All right, let's build out the next 10 players on our Dallas Cowboy draft board. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan in the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at a draft prospect that stands apart from his peers, the guy that we believe showcases the strength and power needed to maybe push the Cowboys forward as we get so we start looking ahead to the 2025 season. And this week's Nissan Armada Player of the Week is Jalen Walker, the edge linebacker from Georgia. He's so tough. He's smart. He's durable. He's rugged. And you can say all the same things about the Nissan Armada. And when it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. And that's exactly what I think Jalen Walker can do in Dallas and what he'll do in the NFL. And it's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure and shop nissanusa.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are building the Dallas Cowboys 2025 draft board. We got through our top 10 players. Landon, let's jump back in here at spot number 11. Who do you got?
I think for me, we got to put in Shamar Stewart here. That's where I've got the next high rated guy.
Do you think they would take Stewart over Walker?
I think so. I think, there's athletic outside. I think that they probably, I wouldn't be shocked if it went the other way. But I do think that there's more athletic upside there. I think that they probably would go that route.
Let me ask you this. Do you think both players are on the board? Shamar Stewart, Matthew Golden, who do you think they're taking?
I think it's tough to know. Golden is still really someone I'm having a hard time kind of getting a vibe for. They probably would take Golden maybe because of positional value.
So do you want to maybe stack them?
Well, not positional value, but need there, right? Like,
do you think we could put them like Golden, Stewart, Michael, and kind of trying to group those three together as like guys they like at 12, but maybe don't absolutely love at 12?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Again, we can go back and we can change some of these, but these are almost like placeholders for us right now. So pick 11 is Matthew Golden, 12 is Shamar Stewart, 13 is Michael Williams. And then I wonder, Landon, if it's just like Jalen Walker here. He's just too good of a player to pass up.
Yeah, even with the kind of mismatch and, you already have Micah Parsons, so it becomes a little more difficult. I think you probably put him in here just to be fair to the player. Because at a certain point, if you get that washed out, Jalen Walker certainly is
crazy. It's crazy how much, I love him, but we haven't heard a whisper about him at all in regards to Dallas. Like, not at all.
I just don't think that a lot of other teams are going to have a hard time fitting him in spots, but like you could make it work. I think if you've already got a player like that, it's hard to make two of those players work, right? Yeah. Whereas like you're not constantly feeling like you're just trying to solve problems instead of playing football. So I think they're kind of too similar to be on the field at the same time, really a lot. So
all right, so 11 is Matthew Golden, 12 is Shamar Stewart, 13 Michael Williams, 14 Jalen Walker, and that ranking of Walker will like almost guarantee that you won't get him because he's going to go higher than that, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right, pick 15. Here's some of the top players available based on the consensus board. We've got Colston Loveland,
I think
Jihad Campbell, Mike Green, maybe one of the receivers. Who do you got?
I think Green has got some positional value there, of course, but I personally would probably put Colston Loveland next.
Okay.
And then honestly, I might go that route that you have it right there. Colson Loveland and then Jihad Campbell.
Perfect. Let's throw those two guys in. And I do wonder, because of the positional value, if the Cowboys just won't knock them a little bit. But this is kind of where most people are ranking them, somewhere in the middle teens.
Yeah. I think now we can start to kind of get interesting, I think, right? Because the guys that you have left, so Mike Green is, basically considered by most folks to be a lock first round. I think Barron is probably the same sort of situation. And I think Banks is the first guy where, I mean, I could see him definitely being at the bottom of the first and the top of the second. So but I wonder if the positional value aspect of this doesn't kind of knock some of these guys up. Like,
Sure.
for instance, I think Simmons is starting to enter the conversation. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if the Cowboys looked at Simmons and said, "Hey, this kid's just too talented. We understand he's injured." We understand that we normally get our injured guys in the second round, but the upside here is so great that you're getting a real value. I wonder if they don't just rank him kind of in this, like, where are we at, 13 or 14, right?
We're at pick 17 now, so we're
17,
down there a little
sorry.
bit.
So yeah, even more so. That's where I think I would put Simmons here, because you're
Over Banks.
probably yeah, over
Okay.
Banks, yeah. Because I think that I think that the issue is that he's a true tackle. He's got real skills. I mean, the downside there is the injury, right? So if you can get past the injury, you're going to get a really solid player. The question is, can the Cowboys afford to wait on a player
Yeah.
like that? That's why I actually think ranking him here works, because if he falls to the second round, or if he falls to the late first round and the Cowboys want to trade up for him, they could just say, "Hey, 17th guy on our board."
Sure.
Like, it's an easy decision. So
I would advocate for Mike Green here. I know he's a little
yeah,
smaller than what the Cowboys want, but I think he's too good of a player to have outside of the top 20. So he right now is 15th on the consensus board.
that makes
We
sense.
knock him a little bit because of the lack of size, but 18 overall still feels like the right spot.
Yeah, lack of size, just slightly under competition. Obviously, he performed great at the Senior Bowl. Some attitude stuff, but that's kind of what you want to see in an edge. So not so much of a knock on him there. So, but yeah, definitely a guy that I think if he fell a little bit, another guy the Cowboys could end up targeting.
Let me give you a group of 3 names, and you tell me which one you want to put up next. Kelvin Banks, Derek Harmon, or Kenneth Grant.
I think Grant, to me, is probably the top of those guys. I would probably do Grant, Banks, Harmon, maybe, or in that order.
So, and I think the reason why Kenneth Grant gets the edge there is he can be your true nose, but he also can give you some one technique, and I think he's got a little bit of pass rush upside. Whereas I think Banks might be a guard in the NFL, and Harmon, I wonder if Harmon's more just a 3 technique than a 1 technique.
Yeah, and I think with Harmon too, it's like it was incredible. I love him, and I would be thrilled if he was the pick for the Cowboys. But it's also just a little bit of projection, because I think he really only did it for 1 year. So it certainly is more about, let's just see you do it again, young man, kind of situation with Harmon, but definitely a good player.
So you said Grant, Harmon, Banks?
Grant, Banks, Harmon. Is what I would do.
Banks, Harmon. Okay.
Because I do think the thing is with Banks is that he can, what you could do is draft him and sort of, some of the similar situation with some of these other folks, draft him, play him at guard, and then kick him out to tackle if you feel like he's got that kind of skill. He's still very young, if I'm not mistaken, too. So lots of room to grow there.
All right, just to recap the last 5 players. At number 17, Josh Simmons, offensive tackle, Ohio State. Number 18, Marshall edge, Mike Green. 19, defensive tackle, Kenneth Grant from Michigan. 20, Kelvin Banks, guard/tackle from Texas. And then we've got Derek Harmon, defensive tackle from Oregon at 21. Let's add a couple more in here. Who is the best player left on the board for you? Jahdae Barron, Malachi Starks, Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden, Omarion Hampton, Walter Nolan. Who stands out for you?
Okay, so let me just throw these names out. Like Burden, Nolan, and are the 2 guys that I have left as red chip players.
Okay.
Everybody else is basically off this list. So I would probably put Nolan and then Burden but we
Okay.
can do Burden and Nolan if you want to do it for you.
I mean, I would have put Burden. Where are we at now? 23. I would have put him probably 20 spots higher, but that's
3.
okay.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. I was just gonna say.
no, it's fine. Walter Nolan, I think, is somebody the Cowboys obviously could like because there's just not very many athletes like him.
Mhm.
But they obviously have some level of interest in Luther Burden. They brought him in for a 30 visit. But I do wonder if like middle late part of round 1 is more where they would consider Luther Burden rather than at 12.
Yeah, that seems, this is starting to seem appropriate for where they probably would be taking these guys. So, yeah, I think this is starting to fall into place a little bit. You're starting to see some of the standard stuff come in. That's why we haven't taken a guy like Jahdae Barron. He's falling a little bit because on the Cowboys board, just that lack of length and size issues that it really is going to cause you to fall on the Cowboys board.
All right, let's finish out the top 32 of this big board. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day and find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, we're going to finish out our Dallas Cowboys big board. We're going to go a little quicker. So I'm just going to give you some names and you tell me who you would pick. So, again, we're at pick number 24 now. Luther Burden, Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon, Kelvin Banks are the last couple of names. Right now, Omarion Hampton or Emeka Buke?
Omarion Hampton, I think.
Okay.
And then Emeka Buke.
Okay, that's good. So we've got Hampton at 24, Ibuka at 25. Again, I think
we also need to add in Connerly here, Josh Connerly, who's an offensive tackle who I think is probably I have as the very, very, very top of the second round. I have him probably ranked right beneath those two guys. Right?
Okay, we can put Josh Connerly. I think it was Mike Tice, the former Vikings coach, that said he was one of his favorite offensive linemen in the entire class. So
his favorite in the entire class.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, a couple more names here. We've got we've got 3 safeties because I consider Jahdae Barron a safety. Jahdae Barron, Malachi Starks, and Nick Emanwari.
Mm-hmm.
I almost wonder if the Cowboys will just cheat a little bit on their board and just put all 3 of them like right next to each other.
Maybe. It certainly feels like they could be, just kind of all stacked in there together.
Which one do you think they like the best?
Starks, right? Like you're saying Barron, Starks, and Emanwari, right?
Yeah, I almost wonder if it is Barron because he could play the slot.
Do you think Starks can't play the slot? That's kind of where I thought I would play him.
Okay,
as the nickelback.
I like Starks better, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I would probably put Starks and then Barron. Honestly, I would put Starks and then Emanwari and then Barron. Just because I just don't think he's going to meet their thresholds. So what do you think?
I'm good with Starks. I just think Starks is a better player.
That's fair. Let's do that.
Okay. So we got Malachi Starks. Who do you want to put at 28?
Look, I think we actually can scroll down a little bit because I know folks have Emanwari above him, but I would prefer Izaraku or Booker or Zabel over those guys. Maybe not Zabel just for position. And Booker, honestly, he's an interior offensive line, so maybe we need to kind of put him behind some of these guys. But Izaraki, Trey Amos, honestly, can start entering into the conversation, right? Because
do you think they have Amos ahead of Barron?
Yes, because I think Amos probably is the type of corner that they prefer. Amos is built in a Will McClay lab, whereas Barron is decidedly not. Right?
That's fine. Let's do Amos and Ravel because I almost wonder if those two guys they have top 30 grades on, and they're just hoping one of them falls to them at 44. So we've got Trey Amos, corner from Ole Miss at 28. We're putting Siobhan Ravel at number 29. Back on the board here at 30. Who do you got?
Where's Landon Jackson on that board?
He's a little bit lower. Landon Jackson is at 42 overall.
It looks like they got all those guys kind of stacked in there together.
TreVeyon Henderson?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we could start looking at those running backs. Absolutely. I mean, Henderson, and honestly, if you're going to put Henderson in there, there's not really a reason not to put Judkins in there too.
Okay.
I
Do you
haven't
like
touched
both of those guys over Booker, Zabel, Ezeriki, Pierce?
Pierce. Uh, I probably would put Ezeriki above them, but the rest, yes.
Okay. So let's do Donovan Ezeriki, the edge from Boston College at 30. And then, yeah, let's just add our running backs. Let's go TreVeyon Henderson at pick 31, and then let's go Quinshon Judkins
Yep.
at 32.
Yeah.
And there you go. That's our top 32 of our board, Landon.
Yeah, we've done it. It's fantastic. It's a good group of folks too. Like, I mean, they all kind of, look. I mean, obviously, we it's not, so chalk to the consensus board. We obviously move things around based on how we feel the Cowboys are going to view these folks. We certainly could be wrong. I mean, but I think that they will. It feels like this year they're going to need to be a little bit flexible on some of their thresholds. But having said that, they are still going to do what they can to not be, to try to meet those.
Yep.
And so if they need to, if they do any kind of window dressing of their board, it will be to prioritize athletes and bodies that styles that they like.
Yes.
Over the guys who may have really good tape, but they worry about their projection into the NFL.
All right, so I'm going to run through this one last time in case you missed any of the names. And I'll go slow. Travis Hunter at 1, Abdul Carter at 2. We think there's a clear drop-off after those two players. Into the next tier is Armand Membu, Mason Graham, Tyler Warren, Will Campbell, McMillan, Genty. And it feels like that's probably another tier break. That like there's the top 8 players in this class. And in the next group, Will Johnson, Cam Ward. And then it gets into a really weird tier that I think we still need to figure out. And it's this grouping of Matthew Golden, a receiver from Texas, at 11, Shamar Stewart at 12 to Texas A&M, Mykel Williams, the edge from Georgia. I wouldn't be surprised if Mykel is the top of that list, or if it's Golden at the top of that list, or if it's Stewart. Like, I think you can rank any of those guys the same way. I would put Jalen Walker in that same tier. They might not, but I think, again, Landon, and tell me if you think differently, after that group of Golden, Stewart, Williams, there feels like it's another clear drop-off in talent.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at least as far as the Cowboys are concerned, for sure. Like, I think Loveland is an interesting player, but to me, like, certainly a first-round tight end, a difference maker. But I wonder how different he is. I mean, he's better, but how different he is than Ferguson. And I think that's like kind of like, well, that's a little bit of a knock, is that at least with Warren, you're getting a different guy. I think with some of these other folks, it's like there's just one more thing about them that doesn't make them a perfect fit, whether that's positional value or their player profile.
Yeah.
I think that honestly, you look at that group, and I'm not gonna be mad about Loveland or Campbell or Simmons or Green or any of those guys joining the team, right?
No.
But I think the question you have is when you see, like, if I see a draft with Colston Loveland as the pick for the Cowboys or Jihad Campbell with the pick as the Cowboys, I like those players. But my first question is always, who else was on the board? Who else did you draft away from? So I think this kind of gives you a good stack of how the Cowboys will prioritize these folks. And I do think that the one thing we didn't account for, we did account for positional value, but we didn't account for sequencing, right? Which is why, Golden very potentially could be a pick, despite the fact that, he may not be ranked as high as another player that's on the board, because you're not going to get an opportunity to get a player close to Golden your next go around. So we didn't account for sequencing. That's just a board stack with talent and or positional value. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and again, they don't always just draft the best player in their board. A lot of times they are thinking of positional value, and they're thinking about what positions have more talent, in rounds 2 or 3, or which positions don't have talent. So I think this gives us a good idea of what their board may look like later this month, but it's not gospel either. And we know that it can change, and they can reach and make picks that maybe they don't even have graded that highly. So a lot can change between now and the draft. That is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Want to let you know that we're going to post this board onto social media You can follow along as the draft is going on, and we'll make sure that we're highlighting the guys that are gone and maybe some potential targets. So make sure that you have this saved somewhere, favorite it, whatever you need to do, bookmark it, so you can keep up with us during the draft. Go check out the Locked On Cowboys podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.